This episode is dedicated to the memories of Terry Funk and Windham, Bray Wyatt, Rotunda.
Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And we are at episode 101. We have broken the barrier. We have shattered the glass ceiling. We have emerged from the deep. We have decimated the sound barrier. We've broken a bunch of shit. We'll put it that way.
Broken the space-time continuum.
Sure, why not? Let's just add that to our list of accolades. We are Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
We may have said that already, but that's okay.
Yeah.
To kick off our next 100 episodes, we are doing an episode that's pretty big. Not as big as our last episode on thrash metal, but we're since the last movie, I'll put it to you this way, it is a legendary movie. It is something that is beloved, unlike the last item that had big in the title that was a piece of shit. This is not the big hit. This is not the big hit 2. This is the Big Lebowski. Someone who is well loved and well served and totally abides. This is a movie that has had probably some of the cultiest cult status of any cult. Even Charles Manson would say, now that's a cult.
Yeah.
But I digress. We are Why Does This Exist? We're a podcast that talks about the weirdest in pop culture. Whether it's a movie, a TV show, a video game, a musical genre, you name it, we're going to talk about it. And we'll have a great time, and you'll have a bad time. If you actually like what we're doing, and you're one of the few people who's hung on for dear life for these past 100 episodes, I'm sorry. But on top of that, you might as well start kicking in a little bit and giving back to the community. The community being Rob, myself, and poor Tony. The man has emerging health issues. He's practically on the streets because we can't pay him. So you should. That's why you head over to patreon.com/whydoesthisexist and you give us a bunch of money. As little as you want, or as much as you want, or as little as you want. It makes no difference. And if you hate us, think of Tony, who is stranded in the Sahara Desert with no money. All he's got is his laptop, and occasionally he has to go to a harem for Wi-Fi. It's a pretty terrible life. So if not for us, think of Tony and donate money to the Patreon so that Tony can actually try to live somewhat comfortably to the best of his abilities. For God's sakes, the poor man can't even feed his dog. I don't even know if he has a dog, but it makes for a compelling story.
Huh.
You could also find us on social media, mostly Facebook. We don't really care about Twitter, X, whatever it is. The thing that's not a porn site but sounds like it is. We don't do the TikToks or any of those other things, but we're on the Facebook. You can send us some weird pictures like Muhammad and a couple of other people, and we'll give you a shout out on the show. Actually, I'm just kidding. We won't give you a shout out. We'll instead roast you. For example, my mom gave us $1, and I asked why. She said it was to support me. And I said, good God, Mom. Why would you do that? I'm sorry, that was a terrible roast. I'm out of ideas. I also really don't want to... My mom's had it rough. I haven't... lately. I haven't, so I don't really have a good reason to roast her. I also don't have anything kind to say. I don't have anything too cruel to say at this moment. I would like to, but I really just can't. Maybe you should try something. Not on
Me?
my mother, but maybe your mother. I don't know. Roast somebody. I'm not the one with the one-liners today. You might.
I ain't got nothing, man. I'm burned out, man. I got nothing. Nothing. Oh, I'll tell you. I'll roast something. I'll roast the fucking United States government.
Oh no.
All right, because if anyone's been like kind of following what's going on, like there's this dude David Grush who basically went before Congress and said that the U.S. The Department of Defense has a UFO crash retrieval program.
This is not the turn I was expecting us to take.
And you know what? I'm gonna roast this one guy in particular, but let me get to it. So anyway, David Grush has he came before Congress and testified under oath that the United States has a UFO crash retrieval program and that they've recovered alien bodies and technology and what have you. And it was pretty legitimate. The guy is pretty legit. Well, shortly after that, of course, the fucking wag the dog starts, and they have to do whatever they can to discredit this guy because he's just too legit, and they don't want this shit out. So they friggin' hire this shill from the Independent. I gotta find out what his name is now. Hold on.
The U.S. government has not donated money to the Patreon. If it does, we might have to start talking about very kindly of things, and we might have to start reviewing only things that they classify that they clear.
Yeah, well, screw that. Let me see if I can find this stupid friggin' guy's name now. The guy who wrote from the Independent. I think they took the article down because I can't even find it now.
Do you mean the guy they grilled on Breaking Points?
Yeah. Yeah, the guy they grilled on Break. I don't even know the guy's name. And you know what? I don't even care because I don't want to friggin' give him any kind of promotion. This douchebag friggin' journalist from the Independent claimed that wrote an article that was basically a fucking hit piece saying that David Grush was an alcoholic and had like PTSD and was in mental institutions several times because the friggin' Department of Defense leaked Grush's medical history, which is a gross violation of HIPAA, by the way. Anybody in the medical industry will tell you that is literally illegal. At the very least, you lose your job. At the very worst, you could go to jail for it. And so this douchebag from the Independent took this friggin' information and wrote this hit piece article and then tried to backtrack and say, oh, it wasn't a hit piece. I was just trying to get all sides of it. Yeah, clearly. The guy was a shill and he's a piece of shit and screw that guy. And that's a real roast. Fuck that guy.
All right. He did not donate money to us, but if he did
donate money to us, and if he did donate money to us, I'd get the cash out of the friggin' rent cash machine, drive to his house, and shove it up his friggin' ass.
All right. Back in business. Thanks for saving the day.
Yeah.
Anyway, you are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. The Big Lebowski. It's a global sensation that really people didn't seem to get at first. They didn't really seem to understand what was going on with this thing. And honestly, I've watched this several times. And I gotta say, this last time that I watched it, I started to really think about things a little bit differently. This movie has several underlying themes. The main thing is never assume, because it's pretty much based off of awful assumptions.
Yeah.
And not actually getting your shit together. Speaking of of people who haven't gotten their shit together, that guy from the Independent is really up shit's creek right now.
Yeah. He definitely doesn't have his shit together.
Nope. Anyway, so the Big Lebowski has pretty much defined Jeff Bridges, and a lot of people now credit Jeff Bridges as just being the dude all the time because he's a really chill guy, which is probably not too far off, but at the same time, I think you're giving way too much credit to the character at that point, where, like, I think Jeff Bridges is cool, and people just saying, oh, well, he's the dude all the time, so of course he was great in it. I mean, yes and no, but anyway, the whole, like, basically, the whole point of the whole movie is based around one giant misconception and bad information. So, similar to the David Grush thing.
Yeah.
Big Lebowski is the Big Lebowski that we love is, well, he's not really the Big Lebowski. See, the dude is a guy whose name is Jeff Lebowski. He's just he's kind of a loser guy who, like, he's just there. He's just pretty zen. He doesn't really have anything going on. He doesn't work. He kind of just but he's still able to pay his bills. But he gets by. He's all right. He's doing his thing. He likes a White Russian. He likes him. He likes a joint. He likes the ganja, and he also really enjoys a good White Russian. Yeah. And he's just a chill dude. Everybody seems to like him. He's just kind of doing his thing, floating through life, and it's fine.
He's just the dude.
Yeah, he pretty much is just the dude.
The dude abides.
The problem is the Big Lebowski is a well-to-do, stately gentleman who was a paraplegic guy on the other side of town, very wealthy, etc. And he has a nice trophy wife who has left, who has fled. He believes that she's been kidnapped, or these kidnappers try to find things out. There's a mystery element involved.
Yeah.
And it turns out to be a whole friggin' sham if you haven't seen this thing. But El Duderino, his dudeness, basically, he shares the same name as the Big Lebowski, Jeff Lebowski, but the Jeff Lebowski that these guys are looking to beat up, like, they barge into his apartment, they pee on his rug, they ruin they trash the place because they're looking for this girl, and they're like, "What happened, Lebowski?" Because they're like, what we find out that they're thugs for, like, the pornographer in town, Jackie Treehorn. And they're looking for Lebowski. They're looking to take his money because his trophy wife owes the porn guy money for whatever reason. And they go to his house and they're like, where's your wife? Like, what happened? Where'd your wife go? Where's the money? Like, what happened? Like, we're going to kick your ass and take all your stuff. We're going to destroy everything that you love. And he's like, you got the wrong guy. And they're like, oh yeah, that's real cute. And he's like, do I look like I'm married? Do you see a ring on this finger? Do you like, do I even look like I have money? Like, look at this place. Look at me. Like, do you see anything of value at all? And they kind of realize, oh yeah, we're idiots. So they, like, just pee on the rug and they leave.
Yeah.
And other people that want money from Lebowski, or they're trying to, like, ransom Lebowski for money, they keep going to the dude, and the dude is like, why do I keep getting mixed up in this? And he also goes to visit the Big Lebowski.
Yeah, well, the only reason he even goes to visit the Big Lebowski in the first place because he just wants someone to replace his rug. That's the only good thing he cares about, really. Like, he doesn't give a shit about the guy's wife, doesn't care about the money. He just wants a new rug. So yes. he like, on the advice of his bowling partners, Walter Sobchak and Donnie Karabatsos, he goes to confront the guy and try to get money for a new rug. And of course, the Big Lebowski is, like, completely like, fuck you, you're a fucking piece of shit, lazy bum. And basically, like, just, throws him out, in so many words. And, and the dude just decides to take a rug anyway. He goes to the Big Lebowski's, his like, assistant, I guess, Brant, who's played by, Philip Seymour Hoffman, which is just hilarious. The casting in this movie is, like, ridiculous because it's, like, a really star-studded cast, and everybody plays, like, the most people you would never think they would play. It's just, like, it's hilarious. And
Steve Buscemi barely has any lines in the movie, and they're constantly telling him to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And it's because the Coen brothers, who directed The Big Lebowski, that was their follow up to Fargo, which
Yeah.
in that movie apparently Steve Buscemi had so many lines that that he was constantly speaking throughout the movie and everything that like people just by the end of it they got sick of hearing him talk. So this movie they decided to just kind of rib him.
Yeah. And it's hilarious because it's just like he becomes like kind of like the punching bag of Walter, who's like this like Vietnam veteran who's like also extremely right wing and is just like a crazy person basically. He threatens like someone with a gun for getting a foul in bowling basically.
Yeah, within the first 10 minutes of the movie, mind
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
He bites a man's ear off. On top
Yeah.
of that, he also alludes that he knows how he could get like severed body parts for the dude in broad daylight in the middle, like like while drinking his coffee.
He's also basically completely insane and like
Yes,
a lot of like the problems that the dude has is because of Walter's like out of control, like boisterous, like I'm gonna just do what this is doing my plan, and my plan is completely out of left field and won't work at all, but we're doing it because I say so, kind of thing.
yes, and it's pretty much because he is a divorce. Because one, he's divorced, and two, he's been heavily traumatized by Vietnam.
Yes.
Or at least that's what it appears to be. Now, I've wondered in watching this movie because a lot of times he really doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and he kind of just says things. And like the dude often will call him out on it, and he'll say, "Dude, like that's what are you even talking about? How is this related to Vietnam? How is this related to anything? Why do you keep bringing this out around about yourself? This didn't even happen or whatever." So like, I'm wondering if like I thought about this today, and I wonder if like if there was a cut line or if there was like any like if there's any points in the movie where it could be implied that maybe Walter wasn't even in Vietnam, or if he was in Vietnam, he didn't really do a whole lot of time on the battlefield, if any.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to wonder if like maybe the Vietnam thing is another weird coping mechanism that really just stems from his divorce.
That could be.
Because he's very heavily attached to his ex-wife still. Like he watches the dog. He's like he still like practices the Jewish faith, even though he himself was not born Jewish, and he kind of just like did it to please his ex-wife while they were married, and now there's no reason for him to like celebrate Judaism anymore, but he still kind of does it because he's just kind of clinging to it. Meanwhile, while he's watching the dog, his ex-wife is on vacation with her new boyfriend.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's kind of like bowling, and like bowling is kind of the only thing that keeps him grounded in reality at all. Like that's pretty much all that he has to live for, is that, and the hope that maybe his ex-wife will like take him back after all these years or however long they've been divorced.
Mm-hmm.
It's unclear. So I wonder if like the Vietnam thing even ever happened.
It's kind of there's so many like things that are like implied in this movie that you never really like get like an answer to, which I kind of like about it. I think
that's not implied. That's just my theory after watching it this past time.
Yeah, but there is kind of like an implication of that too. Like he never really goes into detail about Vietnam, and every time he like rants about it, he says, "Oh, those boys over there that got killed." Like he never like says like specifics or anything like that. So it could be just like he's just yelling about Vietnam because he's like a crazy right wing person who thinks that you know that Vietnam was like right and justified or whatever. Like
yeah. Anyway,
so he goes. Obviously he gets thrown out. He gets a new carpet though because he fools Brant into just giving him a carpet. He's like, "Oh yeah, he just told me to take any carpet I want." So he grabs a new carpet and goes home. And basically, he also meets Bunny, the trophy wife, who is like a complete like an utter slut. Like basically like tells him outright like, "I'll suck your dick for $1,000," like right in front of like Brant, the assistant guy. Like
she's a very troubled girl.
Yes, very. And so he kind of just walks out and is like, whatever, I like this whole part of the thing is behind me now. I have a new rug and that's it. Well, he's chilling on his new rug and he once again gets robbed, this time by the Big Lebowski's daughter, Maud Lebowski.
He gets robbed a few times in this movie.
He gets
at
robbed.
Least,
it's
at
like
least 3
joke.
times.
It's an ongoing joke that he keeps getting like robbed in and like not just like his apartment gets broken into and he gets like robbed and beaten up, but he also like his car gets stolen. They steal the briefcase, which he thinks is full of money, even though it ends up not being full of money, which we'll find out later in the movie.
Well, there's a theme of him getting robbed and people steal something that has little to no actual value.
Yes.
Like, he's just like, he's always baffled as to how or why he got robbed and why anyone even bothered to take anything.
Yeah. He also, it's kind of like part of the theme of the whole movie is that like nothing could really like affect the dude. Like, no matter what happens to him, he basically like is the same. He's still the dude and he doesn't like really give a shit or care. You know, he's still like this chill guy who's just like a slacker and like smokes weed and drinks White Russians pretty much. And like he gets robbed multiple times, get beaten up multiple times, and it just like slides off his back. He really doesn't care. And that's really like the overarching theme. And we find that out at the end when he talks to the stranger at the bar. You know, his whole thing is like the dude abides, which is basically like whatever happens, I'm just the dude. Like whatever, you know, I don't care. So they take the rug back. It turns out that the rug that he took was a gift that Maud had given to her mother who passed away. So it was sentimental to her. So, you know, she probably could have just asked for it back, but Maud is also like a crazy person and is like, you know, like this, I guess supposed to be like a crazy feminist, but also like an artist. And she like does like naked art where she like friggin' flies around the room on a trapeze naked and shoots paint on the floor. She's a very weird person.
Yeah, I would say she's obviously expressing like whatever traumas of like growing up in the Lebowski house or growing up as a Lebowski and seeing like, just like how, just seeing like what kind of a person the Big Lebowski really is. And, you know, perhaps she really loved and appreciated her mother, but she obviously can't stand her father one bit.
Yeah.
So that's probably what drove her to be a feminist and very independent woman. She has her own money. Well, we assume that she has her own money. Not like yes, she has money from the inheritance, but she also probably has a lot of money from selling her from selling her paintings. But yeah, she is. I would say she's a radical feminist, but also she's like, she has very interesting traditional values that she's trying to kind of. She's not trying to like get rid of them, but she's trying to contort these values into her own image.
Yeah.
Like, and she's trying to be totally independent of all of these things. She's trying to keep her independence while also like holding on to some of these values. Like, she wants a child and she wants to be a mother, but she doesn't want anything to do with the father. She just wants the father to be like just some random John, like some random person who like she'll probably never meet again, and she just and like that's really all that she wants, so that she could be a mother and just raise her child on her own, just because, as kind of like a big stand against her father and everything. She's an interesting character that doesn't get a whole lot of screen time.
Yeah.
But she maximizes her minutes, and you could really, when you really think about her character, you can really get a sense as to like who she is and why she's, and like her justification for what she's doing. So I think it's kind of cool that they wrote her. They wrote a lot of the characters very ambiguous.
Yeah.
But they gave them. I mean, the Coen brothers are brilliant. I think I know only one of them still does movies now, and the other one just got away from the business. I don't know if they had a falling out or what happened. I'm sure somebody in digital media device land knows and is yelling at us right now through their screen. But they wrote, like, they gave their characters, well, the actors gave their characters enough nuances, and they gave them just enough lines to fill in the blanks where you can kind of figure it out for yourself if you really thought about the characters. And I think that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. It's also the way they write the dialogue is so real. Like, this is probably like the realest dialogue movie you'll ever see, where like a lot of the lines just sounds like what actual people would be talking about if they were having a conversation. Like, it, like a lot of movies, like the dialogue is very contrived and like it's clearly dialogue. Here it feels very natural. It's almost like, and interestingly enough, the majority, like literally the vast majority, like 99% of the lines in this movie were 100% written. There was like not a lot of improvisation in this movie. And so like every like butt or every like dude and man and everything that the dude says and all of that it was all written. So like they're just like very good at writing this like dialogue that just kind of like is like regular people talking dialogue,
Yes,
And
I
I
mean,
think
the whole movie is a social satire.
yes.
But
It's also
really,
interesting to me that not like all the characters are like fairly well off. Like they're well off enough that they live their own lives kind of and like can survive in Los Angeles. And like it's never explained how any of them have money. Basically, like the dude literally does not have a job. He's unemployed, but he has an apartment. He has a car. He has money to buy like Kahlua and vodka and milk for White Russians and weed. Maud is like
he
lives in
always
like
pays the rent on time.
he does, and Maud lives in this like giant apartment like loft that's like her studio, and like again, it's not she says that her father has no money left, basically, like that he's like basically run dry, and he took the money for the ransom for Bunny from like the foundation that her mother started. So like but he lives in this giant mansion with like a swimming pool, and it's like it's never explained how these people could survive. But I guess it doesn't matter for the plot of the movie, except for the fact that the whole reason why Maud wants it kind of like recruits the dude is because she wants the money to be put back into the foundation, essentially. We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but because like basically what happens is,
I mean, the movie's 25 years old, for God's sakes. If you haven't watched the damn thing by now, you're either not 25 or you just live under a rock. I don't know what to say.
well, so Bunny gets kidnapped allegedly, and they ask for a ransom and all that shit. It turns out
If
that
you're
she really
sitting next to someone, whoever it is that's listening to this, if you're sitting next to someone who has never watched The Big Lebowski and you have, this isn't legal advice. This isn't legal advice, and I'm not telling you what you should do to to people. But it may or may not be a good idea to take someone who may or may not be next to you and put them in a burlap sack and beat them with reeds along the river. It may or may not be a good idea. You do what you want. I am not responsible for any of this. Continue.
Anyway,
or you could just make them watch the movie. That works too.
Where was I? Oh, so like she allegedly gets kidnapped. We find out later that she really didn't get kidnapped. It was just a fucking ruse so she can get money, like extract money from her husband, more money, since she owes money all over town allegedly. But anyway, the Big Lebowski goes back to the dude and like recruits him to like be the drop off man, basically, for the ransom. And I guess he agrees because he figures he's going to get paid. And like, so he takes Walter,
promises them $20,000.
Yeah. So he takes Walter with him because why not? Basically.
Also, that's another thing. He keeps getting stiffed on getting paid.
Yeah, all the time. He takes Walter with him, and Walter has this like plan to basically to throw a ringer out, which is a briefcase full of his underwear, to fool the kidnappers, and that way they can keep the $1 million ransom and also get the girl back and then get the $20,000 as well. He just thinks that they're all of a sudden they'll just do that and like not even give a shit, which, you know, of course fails. And Walter tries to like roll out of the car. Meanwhile, the dude crashes the car. They lose the money because first they lose the girl because, you know, they take the ringer and just drive off on motorcycles. So then they decide to go bowling because that's their thing. They go bowling. And
Well,
and
on
the
top
dude's
of it, the dude is supposed to come alone, but Walter insists that he come with him.
yes, yeah.
And then when the kidnappers discover that he's not alone, they go to Welch on the deal and they change plans and they say just throw it over the bridge.
Yeah. Which they throw the fake bag anyway.
Yeah.
So the dude's car gets stolen while they're bowling, and of course the silver briefcase with the alleged $1 million is in the car. So they lost that as well. So not only they lose the girl, and at this point they still don't know for sure that she like faked this. The dude like kind of like says this like the first thing, but then like, you know, like is kind of like doubting himself. He's like,
yeah,
oh,
he
maybe
kind of-
not. Maybe she did get.
He kind of just says it in passing. It's just like a hypothetical, like, oh yeah, you know, wouldn't that be funny? Like,
Yeah.
like there's no meaning behind it, and then like which Walter runs with because he's out of his mind.
Well, and he also basically changes the story every time he's with someone. So first he's like saying that to Walter, and then he's like, no. And then he's convinced that, like, once they go bowling, he's convinced that she actually did get kidnapped, and then they just failed and they're going to kill this girl. Then he like goes to, he meets up again with the Big Lebowski and Brandt, and they basically say how, like, yeah, she was actually kidnapped, and here's like a toe that they got mailed, basically. And it's allegedly her toe. So like then he thinks, oh, maybe she did get kidnapped again. But then it goes back and he's like, oh, well, she probably just kidnapped herself. Like it just keeps going back and forth this whole time where he can't decide if she's actually kidnapped or she kidnapped herself. Well, it turns out she actually did just kidnap herself. Basically, she just leaves town for a couple of days and has her boyfriend, Uli, this German porn star guy, who's also a nihilist. That's mentioned several times throughout the movie. Him and his friends are all nihilists.
And they also used to be in a band called Autobahn that Maud Lebowski happens to own the album of.
Yeah.
So
they're like this obscure German techno band from the 70s, and she has the album.
Yeah, there's like a very weird, like, incestual relationship that all of the characters have with each other in like a weird way, and somehow it all ties back to the porn industry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also like there's also like one of the other themes is just that like the like money or the facade of money, like or wealth in general, like just corrupts everything around it.
Yeah, pretty much. Because the dude is like the poorest character in the story, basically. Because, like, again, he doesn't have a job. You know, he's basically a bum, and he's like the most like morally like right, I guess. Like, he's definitely the chillest guy. He doesn't really, you know, he's not a bad guy per se. He's just like the dude. You know, he just is chill.
We know very little to nothing about Donnie, who like except for whatever it is that Walter says later on in the movie, but knowing Walter, it could just be like he could just be making all this stuff up and they might not even really know each other at all.
Yeah, that's true. So, you know, while this whole thing is going on, this whole like kidnap plot that they're trying to solve, they're also getting ready for a bowling tournament, and because they're like avid bowlers. It's Walter, the dude, and Donnie are their own team.
And the league is pretty much everything that it's the only thing that Walter has left.
Yeah, and it's the only thing that the dude cares about too. Is the bowling league. That's like their thing. It's like whenever something's going wrong, it's like let's just go bowling. You know,
basically. They can always go back to bowling.
Yeah,
it'll like the alley will always be there, even though everything else is not.
Yes. So you know, we meet these interesting characters at the bowling lanes, including Smokey, who's like on one of the rival teams. He's the guy that Walter basically threatens with a gun for stepping over the line. And we also have you would think his name is Jesus, but it's actually Jesus. and Jesus Quintana, played by John Turturro,
Yes.
who is like this, like I guess some kind of, he's supposed to be some kind of Spanish or Latin American man who, you know, is kind of like supposed to be like implied that he's like this hotshot bowler. But then like Walter comes out with that he's actually like a pedophile, like a really bad pedophile.
Yeah.
And like when he first came to LA, had to go door to door and tell everybody in the neighborhood that he was a pedophile. That was like the ruling that was against him by the judge. So again,
Well, that's what they make. I don't know if they still do that, but that's what they made you do.
Well, I mean, they make you like
if
register.
that's what you did. Well, yeah, you have to register, but like but you also had to go door to door to people in the neighborhood and tell them that.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if it was specifically to the people who had families and you had to alert them, or if it was just every door within a certain vicinity.
I don't know.
But I know I know that one time in my old neighborhood that happened, and we had gotten wind of that there was like somebody who was like a pedo that like did time and they got out of prison for that or whatever. So like my mom freaked out because my mom was on the PTA, and that's kind of how she found out. And we didn't really know who it was. I don't know if he came to the house or anything. Well, like not coming into the house. That would never have happened. But he like outside going door to door and telling anything. I don't know if that happened or not, and I'm not going to ask my parents about that. But I do know that there was one point in time where like someone of that ilk had moved into the neighborhood, and my mom freaked out, and rightfully so. And you know, I think I was like maybe 13 or something like that, and my siblings were quite a bit younger. But yeah, you pretty much got like a telegram somehow that like somebody like that had moved in. I don't know how it is now.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But we don't even know if Jesus Quintana is actually, because again, Walter tells this whole story, and Walter is like at best a unreliable narrator, you know, because
right.
he just like makes shit up basically.
Again, this is why I question whether or not he actually served in Vietnam at all.
Yeah. So they're preparing for that. Meanwhile, the dude keeps getting like in more and more hijinks with all these like high-powered LA people. He ends up meeting Jackie Treehorn, the porn kingpin, because the thugs from the beginning of the movie come back to take him to Jackie. And who wants to know where Bunny is and what happened to the money? And he's like, dude, like I don't like he's like, you want the money? Some kid stole it, and like tells him where the kid lives, and they basically just drug him and like throw him out. Basically,
yes. A little bit earlier in that, Walter somehow gets a hot tip that the briefcase that they lost in the car with the money and everything, a kid took it got taken by some like 15-year-old kid who's the son of a famous television writer who now has like a terminal illness, and he's in an iron lung.
Yeah.
So he's like not even conscious. So they visit the house and they like try to shake down this 15-year-old who like has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And
so like, they get
super violent, and they destroy someone's Corvette over
there's a Corvette parked out front, and they assume that the kid bought the Corvette with the money that he stole. Well, it turns out it wasn't the kid's Corvette. It was the neighbor's Corvette. And the neighbor immediately starts destroying the dude's car in revenge as Walter destroys the Corvette. And it's like, so the dude is just like getting like screwed over because Walter's a jackass. Essentially, again, this happens constantly throughout the movie.
Another very poor assumption.
Yes, exactly. Which are often made by Walter.
Yes. It's everybody except the dude makes a poor assumption, and every one of their poor assumptions has consequences that only seem to fall on the dude.
Yes.
Who was kind of an innocent bystander to the whole thing.
It really is. This is like a movie where like an innocent bystander is like thrust into the middle of everything, and like no matter what, like, you know, he's not like the hero that like just like, you know, he like finds himself and becomes this like action hero and like saves the day. He's like literally just like stumbling his way through all these mishaps and like really doesn't want anything to do with anything. He's just trying to like, you know, make it through. And really all he wants is his rug back, because it really puts the room together.
For those of you in digital media device land, Do you ever have that one friend where you really just want them to win one time and they never do? Where every time it looks like things are like about to get better for this friend of yours, just a whole shitstorm of bad luck just comes their way and they can never seem to get away from it? That's basically the dude. And none of this is their fault. It's just that well, God hates them and thinks it's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. If you believe in God and we've angered you, well, sorry. If you thought that was funny, good.
Yeah. So the dude gets thrown out of another place. Jackie Treehorn basically throws him out after drugging him. And the dude gets thrown out of a taxi cab because he says he hates the fucking Eagles. And it was the taxi cab driver's favorite song, or favorite band rather.
Which you hear the Eagles are a recurring theme.
Yes.
Throughout the movie, and they usually occur in situations or like around people that the dude does not get along with.
Yeah, Jesus Quintana's theme song is a Spanish version of Hotel California.
That's the only Eagles song that I like, and that's the best version of that song. But also, I don't know anybody that actually likes the Eagles. And with all, like, just out of respect for the dude and to play the dude's advocate, I don't know anyone who likes the Eagles. I also have never I have never also seen anyone pay for an Eagles record. I came upon an Eagles vinyl of the Eagles' greatest hits, which I guess they printed a bajillion of. I came across that record for free because I was trying to buy a Metallica album from some like random record guy in the city, and he was like, hey, is this like, hey, cool. I was trying to buy an original And Justice for All, but he wanted way too much money for it, so I bought like a Van Halen or something, and I bought a couple of other things for like, and I spent like $30 or whatever, and he's like, oh, here you go. Why don't you just take this? And I was like, man, I hate the fucking Eagles. And we both started laughing. And he's like, everybody does. I can't get rid of this. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll just take it. And I'm like, but I'm not going to listen to it. He's like, I don't care what you do with it. Just get it out of here. So if you like the Eagles, fuck you. If you're in the Eagles, fuck you.
Fuck you, pay me.
Well, you can do that by heading over to patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. If you don't want to pay me, pay Tony.
Yeah.
Send Tony's 16-year-old son to college early. He's very bright. Tony doesn't have a son.
No. That was a blatant lie.
That was.
We're going to get sued now.
No, my last name is Solchek. I am not held responsible for any of this. My boys didn't die face down in the muck so that you and I could be sued by the guy who writes stuff for us time to time.
Yeah.
Continue.
So the dude finally gets back to his apartment, and again, Maud is there, who like literally just basically says like, oh, have sex with me. And
Hello? Oh, you cut out. It's like fading. There's latency.
Yeah. Connection. Okay. Is it back?
Yeah, it's back. Anyway, so she says, have sex with me. Continue.
Yes. As we mentioned before, she's literally just basically looking for a sperm donor. She wants to get pregnant, but not have a relationship with the father. So she uses the dude for that. So that happens. The dude and Walter then go back against and confront the Big Lebowski. And they find out that Bunny had basically just left and not told anyone, which they knew from the start. And that the nihilists were the ones that like basically tried to embezzle the money. You know, the German guys, which is it's just like random, like why she's friends with a bunch of nihilists that happen to be German.
Which Bunny also had done this is going back a little bit, but Bunny also knows the nihilist because she did a porn with him.
Yes.
For Jackie Treehorn.
Yes. So all the characters are really linked. It's almost like a friggin' like it's like Pulp Fiction or something.
Yeah. So so they may or may not. So like. So I don't know. I guess everybody's indebted to the porn guy somehow. Which like which we see when the dude gets kicked out of when like the porn guy drugs him and pins him on being like being a rude drunk guest, and the police chief beats him up basically, and they kick him out. They tell him never to come back and everything, and he's like, I know my rights, man. Like, what do you mean? He's like, listen, Jackie Treehorn he draws a lot of water. You don't draw shit. So I don't really basically he has a lot of money. You don't. So we really don't care what you have to say. Yeah. So we're just going to look the other way on anything that he does, which it's porn. Nothing is good about about the business he's in.
Yeah.
And he's exploiting people constantly. And that's another theme, is that the wealthy in this movie are up to no good, and people tend to look the other way. Kind of like how the Big Lebowski doesn't have any money. He's like embezzling money from from a charity for urban, that's supposed to aid children in urban communities that are disadvantaged, and nobody seems to care. He still gets to live in his mansion. He's not it doesn't seem like it's a well-kept secret, but nobody seems to do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, they confront him about the fact that there was even money in the briefcase, that he's poor and doesn't actually have money.
Well, they do, but he doesn't really care because who's going to believe them? He says it the same way. It's my word against yours.
Exactly. And then, of course, Walter goes over the top again and says, I don't even think you're really paralyzed, and picks him up out of his wheelchair and then drops him on the floor because
another poor assumption.
He actually is paralyzed, and Walter is just a crazy person.
Yep.
So they go back to the bowling alley, basically everything is kind of semi.
We also find out that there's a private investigator who thinks the dude is a private investigator and thinks he's brilliant. But it turns out that he is also looking for Bunny, and we get her real name, which is Dina Knudsen or something like that.
Yeah.
And she's from Minnesota, which may or may not be a reference to Fargo in a way.
Yeah.
And she lives on a farm. I don't know. I've never really watched Fargo, so I don't know if that's a picture of the farm in Fargo or something like that. But she I'm wondering if it's supposed to allude that they take place in the same universe.
Yeah.
But she's Fargo is in North Dakota, so that wouldn't be right then. Never mind. I'm totally wrong. Yeah. Anyway, botching hard. So he's her family told me to show her this picture of the old farm and maybe it'll make her homesick. So she's a troubled girl. So we get right off the bat, without hearing any real dialogue from her, any backstory from anyone else, that she's a troubled runaway. She was a cheerleader in high school, and she whatever it is that she was looking for, something happened, and she decided to leave and go to California, and here she is doing all these things. She got into trouble. She's making a lot of bad decisions and probably bad assumptions. And she winds up in this giant mess.
Yeah. Yeah. So
after Lebowski, they drop him on his ass. They decide they're going to pick him up. then they go over to then they go back to the bowling alley. They have their bowling match, which has been postponed to Wednesday, and the Jesus is not happy.
Yes, no, he goes on a
And
huge rant and threatens them to like sexually assault them, basically.
and they get outside, and there are the nihilists waiting for them. We like earlier in the film, we see the nihilists and with with a woman at a diner, and they're all pretty much unanimously order pancakes or like breakfast foods at the diner. And we see the girlfriend who, like, she has her leg in a cast and she's missing a toe, and it's the toe that was severed.
Yeah.
And we learn, and so we realize that at that point, Walter is actually right, and the dude's like batty little like thing that meant nothing was like totally on the ball the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. The dude was right the whole.
Yeah. So we go so then we end up going over, so then back at the bowling alley, they go outside, and the nihilists are waiting for them, and they torch the dude's car because like they're incensed and they've realized the jig is up. We're not getting any money because it's implied that they called the dude, or they called Jackie Treehorn, who called Lebowski, and they called Lebowski. Sorry, not the dude. That's the other Lebowski. They called the Big Lebowski, and they were like, "We're gonna kill the girl," and because like, or like, what, like, where's the money? Like, and he's like, she came home by herself. They figured it out. You're not getting paid now, and they're like, well, now what do we do? We don't have $1 million. My girlfriend doesn't have a toe. And like this whole thing went totally sideways because we did nothing. Like we did all this for nothing, and who knows what the porn guy is gonna have to say about this? And so they end up just going after the dude because what else can they do at this point?
Yeah.
So Walter, in his mad genius, decides he's just going to fight them, which is ironic that they care about anything because they're supposed to be nihilists, and the whole point of nihilism is that nobody really cares. The dude, honestly, is more of a nihilist than anybody in the movie because everybody else seems to care about something in the movie, where the dude really doesn't care about anything except his rug, which he got back pretty quickly by his own terms.
Yeah.
So the dude is more of a nihilist than anybody, including the nihilists.
He's the most nihilist of all the nihilists.
Yes. So Walter takes them head on, and they kick the crap out of them, and then Donnie has a heart attack in the parking lot somehow from the stress, and he dies. And this is where and then they, the next thing we know, we're cutting to the funeral director. Donnie didn't really have any family left, it seems, and they don't want to pay for an urn, so they just they get him cremated, and they put his ashes in a Folgers can, and they try to give a eulogy off a cliff, and they imagine that this is possibly what he would have wanted, which proves that, and like Walter also like gives the eulogy, and the eulogy seems like he's making it up as he goes along, because you see the dude's face where he's like, what are you even talking about? And then somehow this turns into a rant about Vietnam.
Yeah.
And the dude this pisses the dude off because he's heard enough of it. And to top it all off, he shakes the ashes out to try to get them onto the thing, which this also proves that Walter didn't know he didn't know Donnie at all, and maybe the dude didn't either.
Yeah.
Maybe Donnie was like, maybe all three of them are maybe they just all kind of were randos thrown on a team at the bowling alley, because sometimes that happens. You sign up for a league and you don't really have a team, but they just kind of start setting randos together.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's how they met, and they really don't know anything about each other at all. I don't know. It's not like it's unclear, but it doesn't really need to be, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But just to top it off, just to have that little bit of like one last the universe's one last jab at the dude. A gust of wind comes as Walter is dumping the ashes out to go over the Pacific Ocean, and it blows the ashes all over. It blows them back all over the dude.
Yeah.
Where the dude has just had it.
Yeah.
And then Walter kind of hugs him just to like do something about the moment.
Yeah.
And the dude is like, what can I do at this point? So he kind of haphazardly gives in. Basically, it's the worst funeral of all time.
Yeah. So, and so they end up going back to the bowling alley and, playing their game and their tournament. And,
which I don't understand. Which it's not I guess we can assume that they just got another random person to be on their team.
Yeah.
Because you would be down a person in a three people to a team. So I don't know, unless they would let you bowl with a handicap and allow one bowler to bowl twice to make it up. I guess. Like it's undefined. Like the rules of the bowling league are not implied, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we never. But
yeah, for the amount of bowling that there is, they don't really talk about it. Like go into depth about like the actual league itself and like what the rules are and all that.
No, and that's pretty much the movie. Like nothing really happens to the actual criminals.
No,
at least not that we know of.
Everything kind of just goes back to the way it was before.
Yeah.
The only thing we find out is that throughout, like, there's a couple of scenes throughout the movie where the dude is at the bar in the bowling alley and he talks to this guy known as the Stranger, who is played by Sam Elliott. And he's like just like this dude that's like dressed up in like a stereotypical like cowboy outfit, I
mean, great mustache.
Of course, yeah. And I think you don't really ever find out what the Stranger is. He is also the narrator of the beginning and the end of the movie. But you don't really ever find out where he is. I think he might be in some way like either like God or Jesus or something like that. It's supposed to be like, because he knows like way more than like anybody else. Like he actually like knows that, he says at the end that there's a little Lebowski on the way and, he's the one telling the story. So he obviously has like this like divine knowledge that nobody else has of like what's going on. So I don't know if it's like, it's supposed to be like God or something like that. And that's the whole point of like, at the end, as the dude's walking away, and I think he just like, I forget what the exact line is, but he's like, basically like, stay, stay chill, dude, or whatever, and like, and then the dude's just like, the dude abides, like, because it's like just what he does, he's just like always the dude. He has all these experiences over the past like whatever several weeks or whatever it is haven't like changed him or made him like angry or worse. He just continues being the dude.
Yes, and I mean we kind of get a glimpse into the psyche of the dude during a hallucination sequence while he's drugged by Jackie Treehorn, the porn guy, and like it kind of just seems like he just like he views Maud as like a Viking goddess basically.
Yeah,
and he's really only concerned with he's really just concerned with drinking, and like he's really just concerned with drinking White Russians and women and bowling. That's really it. And he's also wearing a cable guy uniform that's similar to the uniform that that the Nihilist wears in the in the porn movie with Bunny and Asia Carrera, who was an actual
porn star.
Yeah, she was a big porn star at the time.
Yeah.
And she like, and it's just funny. But yeah, in the fictitious Jackie Treehorn movie, he's wearing a similar cable guy outfit, which I hadn't really noticed before this time either. I don't know how, but I guess like it's just such a random movie where things just happen and there's not really a rhyme or reason to them that you kind of miss a lot of the details in there, and they don't really seem important, but it is kind of like interesting because it's clear as to what's bothering the dude and what's on his mind at the time. Like the hallucination seems like a crazy, like interesting drug trip, and a lot of people love it. But that kind of like it's really interesting because it shows you that like this is probably the one time where we really see how heavily it's actually weighing on the dude's mind.
Yeah.
And in like the weird dream sequency way that it is. So even though he doesn't seem to really care in real life, he actually might care very deeply for what's going on currently, and he might actually be really, really concerned. But but like he kind of just self medicates by constantly drinking White Russians
Hmm.
and smoking dope. So that would make a lot of sense. Also, he he also like the dream sequence ends where he falls into a gutter. He like he's like he hits a strike by his being basically, and he and you just and he like he falls down like a rabbit hole basically, and he's like just trapped by the nihilists who are coming to neuter him basically.
Yeah.
And so like you could see all of these like crazy things going on in his mind, and why he's like and what he is, and like how concerned he actually is for like what's going on. So
Yeah.
I just want like I just wanted to call that out because I never really thought about the hallucination that much until now.
Yeah.
But it is a really interesting sequence. Also, the Coen brothers, they make fascinating movies.
Yeah.
You can really get in like they don't there's always very believable dialogue, and they're also sometimes, and there's really just enough for you to fully understand the characters, and like not to mention that they get great actors, but the dialogue is also written well because like we
Yeah.
said in The Big Hit, sorry to bring that up, but like we said in The Big Hit, you could get great actors, but if the script is terrible, it's very difficult for anything for like the movie to be any good.
Yeah.
Which this movie people really didn't understand at first. They The movie did not do well in theaters. This was the follow-up to Fargo, which won an Oscar,
Yeah.
and the movie only grossed 18 million in theaters, which, like we've said before, that's chump change compared to the compared to how much a movie actually costs to make and what it is. This did gross a little higher. Well, its opening weekend it did 18 million across the box office. The film cost 15 to make. Across the box office, it made 47 million, which that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But definitely, that would definitely be considered a flop.
It wasn't a blockbuster.
It was not a blockbuster, especially coming off of a movie that just won an Oscar. That would be considered a failure.
Yeah.
Even though it made money, it didn't make as much money as you would expect the follow-up to an Oscar-winning film to make.
Yeah.
But yeah, people really didn't seem to get it. Like a lot of Lebowski's wardrobe was like in the movie was out of his personal closet, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it was literally Jeff Bridges' clothes. Like he just wore
Yeah.
his clothes to the set, like
And
his fucking
also-
bathrobe and fucking boxer shorts, basically.
Yeah, and also Jeff Bridges was like he was like a little concerned with playing the dude because he was a drinker, and he smoked pot constantly throughout the movie, and he had his daughters at the time who
Yeah.
were, I think they were teenagers, or I think they were entering high school or something like that, and he was really concerned about it because he was like, well, yeah, his daughters were preteen. There you go. They were preteen, and he was like, he's a child of. Is his dad Lloyd Bridges?
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That must have been an interesting household.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was like, being the child of a celebrity, I know how that goes. Where like, people say, "Oh, is that who your dad is?" And then you have to like deal with that for like people who might pick on you. So he was like, I didn't want my daughters to go into high school or whatever, and like people would be like, "Oh, your dad's the guy who smoked weed in the movie, right? Does your dad
Right.
smoke weed all the time?" And Now it doesn't matter because it's like legal in a lot of places, but in 1998, this was kind of a big concern. And, who knows if like how the school would feel because, you're not, if you're a celebrity, your kids are not going to public school. So, and you have to be vetted and all that. And it's very expensive to go to a private school. And the private school would definitely be concerned. And the private school has the right to, kick your kids out at any point in time for any reason, whether it has to do with the kids or not, because the private school needs to kill the good reputation to charge what it can charge and to have the what's the word? Well, to really have the panache of like saying, oh, well, so and so's kids go here and like, that whole thing and like kind of still keep getting that inner circle money, really.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a slippery slope. He was concerned about it. It didn't really make that much money at like its opening weekend, but over time, it's become this absurd cult classic, and like to the point where you are pretty much guaranteed to see the dude at any Halloween, anything that you go to every year.
Yeah.
Also, I went when I was dorming when I was in college. I had a pal, Taylor, who a thrift store opened up in town. We went to the thrift store to just buy. Well, we were just gonna buy cheap suits. Basically, we are gonna buy like $20 suits and get them like hemmed and whatever. And because we just decided, what would be a great idea if we just bought suits specifically to smoke cigars in and walk around campus, which we did, and it was pretty cool. And like because college students are young and morons, we got like people paid attention to us for some reason, and we got lots of compliments, and we were like on like how sophisticated we looked, and we were all like, "You guys are stupid. We just had a really silly idea." One of my friends, this guy Kyle, decided to wear his suit to the party because this was the year that Occupy Wall Street had happened. This was like a month into it. So he wore the costume and people were like ask him, what are you supposed to be? And he'd say, oh, I'm the 1%. So it actually was like perfect for it was a perfect costume for that occasion. Taylor, on the other hand, bought a bathrobe with frogs on it. And then he bought a wig, and then he bought sunglasses, and we were all like, what are you doing? And he steps out, and the man is the dude. He only quoted the Big Lebowski. He only quoted the dude for the entire night.
That's amazing.
He was like a human soundboard for the evening, and he only drank White Russians for the night. Taylor was specifically in gimmick the moment that he put that thing on.
That's hilarious.
The moment that he took it off. You could not get him to crack. We tried so many times, and he got really hammered on the White Russians, and he would not budge. Other people were trying to make him budge, and he was not stopping. Taylor had a plan, and he stuck to it. This man could have been a professional wrestler. He was also quite tall. He achieved his gimmick so well that I created him in WWF No Mercy.
Nice.
He also had a habit of waiting until the common room area died down, bursting out of his dorm room, cutting a Hulk Hogan promo, and then slamming the door and retreating back to his room for the rest of the night. Taylor was an interesting character, and we loved him. If you're listening out there, Taylor, hi. Also, Taylor is the biggest goddamn AC/DC fan I have ever met in my life. The man has AC/DC bed sheets and blankets, for God's sakes.
Wow.
Yes. He is very, very, very dedicated. He has seen them multiple times. He also is a big Alice Cooper fan. Taylor has met Alice Cooper at several occasions and has hung out with him in bars because Alice Cooper, well, he owns a bar in Binghamton called Cooperstown. And Taylor he visits that. and
Well.
like when he's on tour. So Taylor has gone there and hung out with Alice Cooper a few times.
Nice.
Yes, an interesting
Cool.
man.
Yeah.
Taylor is in fact the dude, but
He is. That's dude.
but not only has it spawned its own like cult reception of fans who are achievers, the little Lebowski achievers, the Big Lebowski has spawned its own it spawned its own religion called dudism, where you go the way of the dude, and the script has also been interpreted into Shakespeare.
That's
called
amazing.
Two Gentlemen of Lebowski. I haven't owned it, but I want to.
Yeah.
There is the sequel that's like, well, not really a sequel, but it's like a spin-off movie that came out, I think, in late 2019, early 2020. I think it was early 2020, called The Jesus Rolls, where it's supposed to be like kind of the Jesus' story, but I never saw it, and it also did not get very good reviews. I don't know if maybe that'll become a cult movie in its own right.
The
Coen
brothers had nothing to do with it. They gave like permission to use the character basically, but they didn't have anything to do with it producing or writing wise.
That explains a lot. Well, anyway, so it's like canon, but not really.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I was getting at is there is the dudism, there is Two Gentlemen of Lebowski, which I would like to actually see like a Shakespeare in the Park of that. I feel like that would be really funny. It has its own festival called Lebowski Fest. It's in Louisville, Kentucky, and they've also held it in like across the country in like a bunch of different states. Its main home is Louisville, and of all places, but you know, Milwaukee, New York, L.A., Vegas, Austin, Seattle, Chicago, San Francisco, Portland, London, Boston, New Orleans, and Pittsburgh. It's been everywhere. Well, and I've never been able to go. I've always wanted to go, and I've always found out that it happened like a month after the fact, and I'm always very upset. And every year that I try to actually like go out of my way and find it, they're not doing it. Or I can't find one in New York, and it's very depressing. But the Lebowski Fest in a nutshell, which actually on like I think on the 10th anniversary of the Big Lebowski DVD set, there's a whole like mini documentary that's like a half hour or something about Lebowski Fest, and people dress up as the Big Lebowski characters, and characters that were not in the movie, that they just like tie back to stories. Like there's people who dress up in like Vietnam gear, and they have like mud around their faces and everything, and greenery. So they're Walter's buddies who like died face down in the muck. Some people dress up as the nihilists in the dream sequences. Some people dress up as Viking Maud. There's a bunch of wacky costumes that people put together for this thing. And of course, it usually takes place in a bowling alley, or there is bowling in there. There's White Russians everywhere. There's about 1 million dudes. And they, of course, screen the movie.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges and I believe the cast and the Coen brothers have attended some of them, or at least one of them. But it's really cool. Lebowski Fest is usually 2 nights. I have to go to one of these. It is on my bucket list. It is a bizarre thing on my bucket list, but it is a bucket list item. So it is a very cool thing. And also, I knew of a all right. So if you lived in New York between, I want to say 2010 and 2015, hopefully you know what I'm talking about. There used to be a store called the Little Lebowski.
No.
And it was on Thompson Street. I went there quite a bit. It was whenever I was going to get a record, which was pretty often. It was across the street from Generation Records and around the corner from Bleecker Bob's. May that store rest in peace too.
Yeah.
A legendary record store that unfortunately bit the dust.
It's so legendary. It even appeared in fucking Seinfeld episode. Like,
Oh yeah. Well, all of the 70s New York punk bands used to sell their records out of there.
yeah,
But rest in peace, Bleecker Bob's. It was around the corner from that place. I think it's a chess store now, which that's
yeah.
pretty cool. Like just fancy chess boards and pieces. But the Little Lebowski, it originally was a store. I think was called Preston's Wonder Emporium or something like that. And there was, there was a really nice guy who ran the place, and it was just like comic books and like memorabilia and knickknacks and like, like movie shirts and just all kinds of like cool stuff that you could really get, and like all these little like knickknacks and like movie related memorabilia and merchandise and stuff. He had a lot of unique things in that store, but at one point he noticed that his biggest merch mover was the Big Lebowski merch.
Mm-hmm.
He also was the only game in town that had Big Lebowski merch. And he didn't really understand why, but it also happened to be his favorite movie, or at least that's what he told me. Maybe that may or may not be true. He may or may not have said that because the store was the store that it was. But he renovated it to like, I don't even think that he didn't really have to do too much of the renovation. He just kind of like did his own thing, I guess, like at night when the store was closed. And he made cardboard cutouts. He made like big life-size cardboard cutouts of like the characters from the Big Lebowski. He put them in the store. He had oak tag that had and like whenever you walked in, you just took a Sharpie that was like just kind of lying around at the desk, and you wrote a quote from the Big Lebowski on the oak tag. And when he filled out the oak tag, he would put the oak tag on the wall, get a new oak tag, and replace it, and it was started over again. So eventually, the ceiling walls of the store was all covered in Lebowski quotes, which was friggin' awesome. He had all these little nuances that were related to the movie. Like he had a rug that like tied that tied the store together.
Mm-hmm.
He grew out his hair, and he worked in his bathrobe and his shorts and everything specifically to look like the dude. At times he spoke like the dude. He may or may not have been stoned during those times, and that's fine. It was in the middle of the West Village, so yeah, of course that would happen. And he was just a really chill guy, and he had a bunch of really cool Lebowski stuff. He had like other movie T-shirts and things like that, but he's like the whole store celebrated the Big Lebowski, and it like honestly, it probably kept him afloat longer than he expected.
Yeah.
But people came in to see it. People had heard of the Big Lebowski store, so they went to the Little Lebowski, and I had a lot of fun times in there. I hope he's still Preston, if that is your real name. I hope you're still around, and I hope you're doing something really cool. But yeah, really interesting place to be.
Big one.
You're cutting out again.
Can you hear me?
Mostly. There's like
Alright.
echoey things. Okay, now you're okay.
All right, cool. It also had a big impact on like alcohol culture, because basically the White Russian became like a hugely popular drink after the Big Lebowski. Like it
for a very long time that was my go-to drink.
Yeah, it became like the drink of choice for a lot of people after the Big Lebowski.
And I hate vodka, but I drank that.
Just because it was in the Big Lebowski.
Yes.
Yeah. So it became a really popular drink because of the movie, basically. Which is, that happens. There's been other stuff like that. I think, I personally started drinking 7 and 7s because they like everybody on Sopranos drinks 7 and 7. So So there you go. I think sometimes, those kinds of things just like seep into the culture,
Yeah. Well, also when I was like around like in my metal days, I also would when I first started drinking, I would drink a Blacktooth Grin because of like Pantera and the
Yeah.
Megadeth song and stuff.
Yeah.
So I totally get it.
Yeah.
But this is the Big Lebowski. It is just an amazing. It's an amazing movie. It's a wonderful experience for anybody who's been there. Um, oh no, it looks like the Lebowski Fest website has expired, so maybe it's not a thing anymore. That will be sad. But anyway, there is also the Church of the Latter Day Dude, where you could get a dude wedding where the dude dresses like, or where the dude is the priest, which would be interesting.
Yeah.
There is also the Day of the Dude, which is the anniversary of the film's release. I believe March 6th is the day. Every year, it's people celebrate it. It also is the Dudism religion philosophy, whatever you want to call it, also is just basically you just kind of live like the dude.
Yeah.
Whatever that means to you. But it is that's the Big Lebowski. There's a bunch of trivia that we could probably get together, but it doesn't really matter.
No.
It's just simply the Big Lebowski is exactly what it is.
Yeah. It's a great movie. It's funny. It has its funny moments. It's like I don't know if it would be considered like a black comedy, I guess, kind of, because it is there's some pretty like, depressing moments, and like the dude kind of gets like shit on the whole movie, but still kind of comes out on top. So I guess that's what's endearing about him, is that he's not like one of these heroes that has to like overcome all these obstacles and becomes like a whole different person and like kind of like rises above. The dude just like has all this bad shit happen to him and stays the same, and that's like the whole point of the movie, is that like people that are like that could just like let like bad stuff slide off of their backs and like kind of just like go with the flow and chill, or like like the world needs more of those people. And that's kind of like what the stranger says at the end, that it would be a much better place if there was more people like the dude.
Yeah, which I can attest to that. If people like which that's what dudism is. That's also kind of how my buddy Taylor is. Taylor essentially is the dude. Like he has had some like rougher times and things like that, but nothing seems to phase that guy.
Yeah.
Like every time I talk to him, he's always like, "Yeah, it's all right. This kind of sucks a little bit, but it's okay. Everything's all right. I'll be on the golf course tomorrow, or I've got some, or like he'll like tell me like something like terrible that happened, and then I'll be like, "Oh my god, dude, are you okay?" And then he'll just be like, "Yeah, I got some Cubans. They're pretty good. I'm gonna go smoke them later." And it's just like, wait, what? You just told me this awful story. Like, what do you mean? Like, what about the Cubans? And he's just like, why are you talking about the Cubans? He's like, Cubans are good. I don't really get them that often, but I got them. There's a really neat cigar shop down like over on the edge of town. I finally checked it out. It was a good idea. They got like this really big humidifier. They got this big like humidity room where like you could just sit there and you could just smoke cigars. It's pretty great. Just just hang out with a bunch of old guys telling stories. And you're like, wait, but what about that thing that happened? And he's like, oh, yeah, it kind of sucked. By the way, I'm going to the golf course tomorrow. Probably smoke a cigar. Probably have some whiskey. It's a lot of fun. It's like I got just a really good 9-iron I'm looking at, and it's like, wait, but what about the bad thing? Like, how are you doing? Are you okay? And he's like, he just kind of just like doesn't worry about it at all, and he's just kind of like telling you what he's excited about.
Mm-hmm.
So like he is very much like the dude, and Taylor has gone full dude. I think something about that night where he dressed up as a dude and channeled him.
Became the dude.
I think he did. I think that was a pivotal moment in his life, and it changed him forever.
It's like when the Nightman came into his room at night, and he became the spirit of the Nightman.
Yes. It must have been a profound experience. But from that day forth, he was not just Taylor, he was the dude. And he followed dudism for the rest of his life.
The dude abides.
Yes, the dude abides. Thanks so much, everybody, for taking the time out to listen to our show. We really appreciate each and every one of you. We've made it to 101 now. So here's to another 100. Here's to another 99.
Yeah.
So suck down those white Russians. Maybe, or maybe not, do you run into a nice marmot? Perhaps you go bowling.
And you know,
I'm sorry, you say what you were going to say.
Oh, I was going to say, if you don't like what we said about tonight, on the show tonight, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
There you go. And also you could just turn us on to your worst enemy and just torture them with this.
Yeah.
That's a great idea too. But for all of you in digital media device land, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate you. And, just have a good time.
Yeah.
Have a good time. Be well. Be merry. Have some fun. Practice your dudism. This has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night.